Welcome to everybody that was able to get here. I'm Lisa Walker of Hyattsville Aging in Place, and we are really excited about holding this discussion about villages in Prince George's County and other places in Maryland. Actually, Corridor Conversations is a program that started during the pandemic, and it was started by 3 villages, they being Hyattsville Aging in Place, Helping Hands University Park, and Neighbors Helping Neighbors College Park. There's also another Aging in Place organization that's connected with us, which is Explorations on Aging in College Park. All of the villages in Prince George's County are on the call today, and I'm going to ask them to say something in just a couple of minutes. But these villages are locally run, they're peer organized, and they're community networks that provide rides, help with chores, and provide information and referral, and otherwise help seniors stay age in place. Okay, we'll get started. So there are 5 villages or 5 village-like organizations in Prince George's County. The oldest would be Hyattsville Aging in Place, which I'm associated with, which was started in 2011. It is an all volunteer organization, or managed by all volunteers. We do have a really helpful person that we do pay, Carter Ross, who you see on the screen, who helps us with communications, our website, and running various programs that we run. The second, I would say that we do all the same things that everybody does, and I don't want to go on any longer. We provide rides, we do a lot of information and referral from across the county, and we're also since the pandemic been very involved in delivery of fresh vegetables to neighbors that we help. I'm going to move on to the second village that started in Prince George's. Layla Riazi is here from the Cheverly Village. Layla, are you here? Ooh, she did have trouble getting in. We can move on from there and come back to her. Where's Peggy from University Park? Do you want to say a few words, Peggy? You're muted right now, so you should unmute yourself.
I got it. Yes. I'm Peggy Smith. I'm the secretary on the steering committee for Helping Hands University Park. Our area of service is within the community of University Park. We have about 50 volunteers and members. It varies between 50 and 75. The services that we provide are direct services. We do rides through the Village Rides program, and we have social events, and we co-sponsor Corridor Conversations. We have online Spanish conversation classes. Right now, post-COVID, our direct services are down, and even rides are down somewhat, but we do seem to be picking up quite a bit all this year of increasing our social interaction activities. And so that's basically what we're focusing on right now, with connections and social activities and getting people back out and not being isolated. And that's our focus right now.
Okay, Peggy, you are a committee of the
we are. City. I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the structure. It was started as a volunteer, and I'm not sure when. And it is still all volunteer, but we are an official committee of the council, the town council. We have some budgeting on a line item in their budget, and some other funding through grants that we can do individual assistance to people if they have temporary financial needs. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Christal, do you want to say something about about Greenbelt?
Sure. In Greenbelt, we have an organization called GIVES, Greenbelt Intergenerational Volunteer Exchange Service. It was started in 1995. And it was started so early, the term village was not even a term that was used. We started GIVES around the same time the Beacon Hill Village in Boston began their programs and offerings. It is a volunteer-only organization, but they do have a partnership with the city of Greenbelt, who provides space for them and liability insurance.
Thank you. Thank you. And Robert, I'm going to introduce Robert from College Park. He's the chair of the board, and he will both talk a little bit about his village and then introduce the speakers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am Robert Thurston, the chair of Neighbors Helping Neighbors of College Park. It is a 501c3 with great partners of the City of College Park, Senior Advisory Committee, and Department of Aging. I'm sorry, College Park Department of Senior Services. We offer transportation, household chores, and friendly visits and calls. All volunteer operation. We have currently about 50 members and 27 volunteers. And I'm going to switch hats here and introduce our panel of speakers this afternoon. I am very excited for a couple of reasons. One is this was my first opportunity to schedule a corridor conversation. So you guys know that Lisa and Carter are your mainstays with corridor conversation. So if today's conversation is not what you expected, you can still blame them. If you like the change, then I had something to do with it. No, just kidding. But we are attempting to talk a little bit about the village movement, the advocacy of it, and trying to expand villages if possible. Prince George's County is kind of behind the curve on villages in our area and probably around the country. We in northern Prince George's County have the opportunity of having 4 villages fairly close, but if you go outside of that area, the opportunities are very scarce. So with that, there was a conversation that I had briefly with my first panelist that I'm going to introduce, Pazit Aviv, who is the village coordinator of Aging and Disabled Services for Montgomery County. She will give us a little bit of, we'll kind of lead the conversation with the panelists, but will give us a little bit of insight of what's happening in Montgomery County and how their village network is operating. We will have next Christal Batey, who is the convener for Aging Prince George's. She, as far as I'm concerned, is Aging Prince George's, who currently gathers the villages who have been introduced to you today, along with a couple others on a monthly basis to kind of talk about advocacy that's going on, many of the things that she's leading, as well as other things that are opportunities for the village network in Prince George's County. Following that, which I'm very excited about, is we also have some state representatives. I'm sorry for this. We have state representatives, Ms. Woodward and Chelsea Wheeler. Ms. Woodward is the Director of Special Initiatives for Maryland Department of Aging, and Ms. Wheeler is the Manager of Support Communities, and I might mention the new Manager of Support Communities. At this point, we're going to ask them each to kind of give us a 10-minute intro of just who they are and how they come about this work, and then we will move further into the panel. So if I may, I will start with Ms. Aviv.
So just to clarify, Robert, you want us to do it in 2 parts. The first one will be introduction, and then we go deeper into growing the movement?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So my name is Pazit Aviv. I work for Montgomery County Aging and Disability Services. I've been holding this position since 2014, and I've had the pleasure of working with over 30 community organizations in Montgomery County in getting villages started up and grow and partner and develop new skills and new abilities. It's been really a wonderful journey with a lot of people, and have had the good fortune of working with many of you in Prince George's County, people in Northern Virginia and in DC. I apologize, I have some allergies, and so if you hear me doing like this, it's not you, it's me. And so the county has advocated, actually there were villages who advocated with county council to create a position of someone from within Aging and Disability Services who would provide support to villages as they went about going, developing themselves and their communities. And my role is what I call jack of all trades. Whatever it takes to help a village succeed, I see that as my responsibility. It involves technical assistance for startup, looking at issues of liability or volunteer management, identifying resources within the local communities and what county has to offer and bring to bear, facilitating connections between villages and whether it is county agencies or other nonprofits so that they can benefit from those relationships, identifying gaps and needs and providing some solutions. And so a lot of it has to do with outreach to the community and spending a lot of time in events such as the ones you're holding right now in many different communities. Before COVID, I would take in upwards of 60 community outreach events in person a year, which was really the best part of my job because I love going new places, meeting new people, and spending a lot of time just talking about that concept. And we'll get into how do we grow the movement, and I think that's some part of the solution. And a lot of it also, so we're doing community outreach, we're doing a lot of technical assistance, and if people have questions, I find the answers to just save on their time. We wrote the Village Guide, which is a kind of a several chapters, easy to follow, very concise, that are outlining the process that communities have gone through when they develop their village. And then also building the relationships. So these are the three key components of my work. We also have grants that villages receive from the county for operational support. And so I serve as the contract monitor to some of them. And so that's just in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. And we will, once do the introductions, and we'll just kind of do that order again to start the panel conversation. I also want to mention for those in the audience, as the discussion is going on from now until the panel opens up, we will have a Q&A point at the end. But if you have any questions that come up, please use the chat box for that, and we'll try to get those questions in as the panelists are speaking. Next up is Ms. Batey from Aging Prince George's.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the role that I possess currently as the convener of Aging in Place Prince George's is sort of unique because it brings together both my full-time job with the City of Greenbelt as the community resource advocate. And then in my private life, I am a founder of a 501c3 nonprofit, the Maryland Umbrella Group, that has a senior services division. So I'm able to parlay both of those entities together to bring and convene the working group here in Prince George's County. Initially, when we started convening this organization, it was out of the need of a point of reference for villages and communities and interested parties to facilitate the creation of villages. So many of the villages here in Prince George's County that are represented today came to the Greenbelt Assistance and Living Program to interview us about the program that we offer. The Greenbelt Assistance and Living Program is soon to be 25 years old. It is an aging in place program run by the City of Greenbelt, originally funded through a grant through NORC Supportive Services. It was and still is information and referral, mental health counseling, nursing services, incontinence products, volunteers, public health services. We have a wide array of programmings and services. And from that, we also work with villages through this working group. When we get into my program, my presentation, the slides, we'll go into it a little bit deeper. But I think that gives you a teaser as far as what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Batey. Next up, we will have Ms. Liz Howard, Director of Special Initiatives, Maryland Director of Aging, Department of Aging.
All right, can you hear me? Wonderful. So Liz Woodward, I'm Director of Special Initiatives. I've been with the Department of Aging for several years. I started as the Food and Wellness Program Coordinator, and then I moved to Long-Term Services Director, and now I'm doing Special Initiatives. And it's really my job to identify new funding opportunities, new partnerships, and new initiatives to support the department's aims. And as you may know, we have a new administration, so also helping to kind of really understand and define those aims is part of my role. And it's been just extremely exciting so far. I just started this role in April, and one of the first things I was tasked with was looking at our Community for Life program, which you may or may not be familiar with, is a program model that we started in 2018, and really thinking about the direction for it moving forward, which has really brought us into this conversation around villages, and I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm also just very excited to be working with Chelsea in what is a newly created role, the Department of Aging, of Manager of Supported Communities. And I'll let Chelsea introduce herself and her role.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Chelsea Wheeler, and it's a privilege to be here with you today. I have just over 2 years with the department. While I consider myself a lifelong learner, I'm really excited to be here to learn from everyone from the different villages and their concepts and their models. Our goal is to delve into the village network, understanding how we can meaningfully enhance the initiative for the benefit of aging Marylanders. In our discussion, we will outline the department's objectives and demonstrate how the village model seamlessly aligns with our overarching goals. And I had to take the moment to say hi, Mom, because I know you're on here.
Well, this becomes a legacy meeting today, so that's great. Thank you all for your wonderful introductions. So as I said before, the people that have just spoken will kind of convene a panel of discussion. I'm going to lead off with Pazit, and hopefully we will all be able to gain greater insight on what village concepts and opportunities are for us.
So actually, I am going to plunge right into the heart of things because, you know, Robert, we had kind of a planning meeting and it got me thinking about where we are as a movement. And so I invite you to just go right me into some kind of like a big picture thinking. I'm about to share my screen, and my presentation has 2 parts. I think I'm going to focus just on the first one, and time permitting, I might show you some of my ideas that I presented at the National Village to Village Network when we were discussing successful launch of villages, just key points. So now I need to find my share screen, do that. And now a problem is, of course, it's always the case, is that the Zoom doesn't like me to do this. There you go. Ta-da! Success. Okay, so the focus of these very few slides is about scaling up the village movement, and I think that is the scaling up. We're talking in 2 kind of vectors that are parallel. One is, once you have a village, how do you keep it growing? How do you add more members? How do you make it alive and thriving? And the second question is then, how do you reach out to adjacent communities? How can Prince George's, for example, have more villages? So what's holding us back? So that's kind of the big question for me. I think that I hope you all join me on this little adventure now. Okay, so when I was looking at why we're not growing, I can see 2 levels of problems or challenges. The big picture causes and the more called the logistics. And in the big picture causes, we have a movement that is very much counterculture to this day and age, our nomenclature. Because when you think about when we think about the core values, and of course it's a very large country, very diverse country, And I am trying to just distill some of the elements that might be in our way. And a lot of it is pick yourself up by the bootstrap, your, individual rights, privacy, autonomy, get it done yourself. It's a lot of these very self-reliant and successful this way. And when we think about what kind of messages we get from our society, it's not really talking about communities. It's not really we don't really hear messages about shared responsibility, about the way that we all are all connected, the way we're all responsible for one another, that community is a critical part of our life. And these subtle messages trickle into our psyche and affect the way we make choices. So when we come to say, we all need one another, for some people it resonates really well, maybe because of their background, but for many people it sounds hollow. It doesn't really mean anything to them. So when you think about a village and the philosophical underpinning of the movement, it is sometimes a very different message than what people are accustomed to hearing from everybody around them. And these subtle messages affect choices people make and behaviors. So we cannot ignore those big questions as we think about villages. And indeed, when I do presentation about villages, I very rarely start with what's a village. That's just that's almost the conclusion. I often start with why. And I go through a set of sort of a historical sociological analysis of why are we here? How did we get to this place where our social infrastructure is virtually decimated? And what are the ramifications of that? So when we think about our messaging, it is really different. The second one is, it's kind of a byproduct of the first, is that we have let our communities fall apart, both in terms of physical infrastructure as well as local social connections. We have not invested in those connections. It's most of the time people really spend investing in other things, but not in community, not in infrastructure that supports community. The third one is structured inequities. When we talk about racism, about redlining, about the way we invest in communities, transportation, the way the network of transportation is managed. And there's so many, I'm not going to go into all the different ways that our structured inequities have really hampered communities' abilities to organize and self-support. And then we're going into some more psychological issues of the denial of aging. A lot of people, again, that goes back to cultural messages that aging is not a good thing. And of course, it's challenging, but it's not something that people need to be denial about. And when we push that aside, when we ignore that, we then also block ourselves from recognizing the value of building a community to support ourselves as we age. And so if I'm not aging, I don't really know what you're talking about because everything's dandy. And if you really don't address that, you will never be able to get to the hearts and minds of people. And the last one is COVID. And I think that had done a number, and you all had mentioned in the introduction, COVID really did a number on us as a community. People needed it more, but were afraid of it. And so we're still seeing people who are in cocoon mode, I call it. You're a little in your shell and you're closed up and you don't want to reach out to anybody. You don't want to do too much. The world has become a much scarier place. And so it's really affecting people's willingness to open up and reach out and connect. And of course, logistics, which are just as important because the devil is in the detail. We at the Village Movement rely on local leaders who want to get the job done. So sometimes people call me and say, well, how come there's no village in Germantown? And I'll tell them, well, show me the leaders of Germantown and we'll start a village. But I can't come from the outside and say, hey, everybody, we're going to start a village in Germantown today. You don't know it, but you need one and you're going to get one and I'll take care of you. That just doesn't happen this way. It's very different than other mechanisms of providing support where a professional entity just comes right in and starts delivering its services in a professional manner. We're building communities. It's a grounds up approach. It's not a top down. And if you don't have those local leaders for whatever reason, you don't have a village. That's where the conversation ends. The other one is the knowledge of the mere existence of the movement, as well as how to go about starting one. And I think that goes back to my talk a lot about the community outreach, because you do need to be constantly out there talking about the idea, providing information, and making people feel like it's doable. It's something that they can do. And of course, there's resources that needs to be invested, especially in underserved communities and communities that are more vulnerable. Sometimes we rely too heavily on the internal capacities of a community, and we need to apply equity lens when we think about how do we let villages start in communities that might not have those internal resources. So, Robert, you want me to stop? I have some suggestions, but I really want to respect everybody's time, so I don't know how I'm doing with time.
If we could, now that you've kind of opened up the can there, I don't know if any of the other panelists want to chime into this before you go to the next slide.
I have a comment. Let me turn my camera on. I think that I found it interesting under your big picture causes with listing COVID, because I found also that COVID also brought into people's thought process the need to be part of a village.
Yep.
The lack of community pre-COVID sort of spurred the mindset to think, I need a social network. I'm alone. I'm here in this house. And how to sort of re-engage with community. Villages in many instances serve that, because they in turn then sort of highlighted how they, being part of a village, helped many people get through COVID. So I see it as a big picture cause as to why we're not growing, but at the same time, I think it was a catalyst for many to start thinking about how to formulate villages in the community. So
I agree with you. COVID is both, I could put it in both categories. For some, it triggered that. And what we saw in the county is this robust civic engagement. Even teens at a high school got together to provide food for older adults or drive them around and things like that. And then there was the other sort of the fear-based response. I think you can put that in both. I don't know why all of a sudden it's gone. I think my PowerPoint is listening to you, Christal.
AI.
Yeah. Where is it? I have no idea.
Miss Will? Wow.
Yes. Excuse me, guys. My video is not working. It will fade in and fade out. I have a question already, and it's probably broad enough that, Pazit, you may want to put it toward the end of the meeting, but I'm very intrigued as to where the culture messaging is originating. I mean, who's doing that? Do you have time to touch on that?
I do. I think we can all answer that. This is a great discussion that we all, as people who live and work and play in this country, have our own perspectives over. I think it started very early on in the inception of this country, you know, in the sense of who came here, why they came here, what are the things that they felt strongly about, and what were the political and philosophical underpinning of the establishment of this country. And it's a lot about liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's about the individual. We're very individual focused, extremely so. And while there was a lot of community, when you think about communities in this country, like, well, I'm just closing my eyes and thinking, okay, when I think about communities in this country, I'm thinking about farmers coming together to build a barn in rural communities, or people coming to a church together to support one another with food. So it's not as though it does not exist, but these are the things that we had done that no longer apply in our modern society. And so we have failed to adapt our community outlet to the way we live today. When you think about faith communities, that was a huge hub for that kind of mindset, but people, I mean, scientifically, sort of data points to a huge decline in participation in faith community life. Even though people continue to be spiritual, they don't affiliate with an institution. And even those who do affiliate with an institution, I see a lot of phenomena, a lot of occurrences around what I call commuter churches, where you go shopping. You don't go to your local church and you build that neighborhood or community infrastructure locally. you go to Laurel, you go to Boyd's, you go to DC, because that's the church that you feel vibes with you in the best way. So yes, you have that community there, but if you can no longer drive and show up, good luck. That is no longer there for you. And so there's these or sociological trends that are kind of we're coming up against. And I'm,
That's very
feel free to
helpful.
add that.
Yes, and I really appreciate your answering my question. Thank you.
Pazit, you can continue.
Okay. Okay, so these are just some ideas of this is completely a preliminary list. Why is it showing 6? My numbers are all wrong. I don't know why. I'm skipping a 5. Maybe there was a 5 there. Hold on one second. I want to see what's the original looking like. Give me a minute. About what can we do? Huh. Well, I guess it was on the original. It's just the numbers are weird. Okay. Oh, I need to share my screen again. I apologize. Okay. Slide. So what can we do? As I've alluded to extensively, I think it has a lot to do with the messaging. And when I think about messaging, it's a really multi-pronged approach. It needs to be a messaging in the way we as individuals talk about this village concept with people we meet, with friends, neighbors, family, and the kind of thought we articulate that get at the heart of what the villages are trying to do. So if I'm just telling people, I'll give you an example. Oh yeah, I work with the village movement and they're helping seniors stay at home safely. That's one message. And a lot of people say it this way because they believe that this is what their village is about. There is another way of saying, villages are about reconnecting or reweaving the local social structures of our community, of recreating or building intentionally a stronger community for everybody. And how important it is for all of us, regardless of how old we are, that we have a strong community around us, that we are a part of something that's bigger than us, that we can both give as well as receive at different times of our life. So the kind of messaging that we create in our conversations affect the way people perceive and are then responding to the message. And that also goes out to the presentation we do in communities. When a homeowners association or a faith community invites us to speak about this, we need to be very careful about how we tailor the message in a way that can be heard and understood in its deepest way. And so I want to recommend the Village Movement California Toolkit. I think they have lots of good ideas there. You can just reach out to Charlotte Dixon. She has the way of sharing that toolkit. I think that sometimes she requires people become members. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but let me know if you want to have access to that. Lori, you have a question? You want me to stop? You feel free to speak up.
Yeah, I'm new to all of this, and I'm not a professional or anything. I'm just a community member. I'm just a little confused. I'll just use the case of Greenbelt. And Greenbelt, Christal introduced GIVES, the Greenbelt Intergenerational Exchange Service.
Yep.
And they're doing things more like providing like rides, individual rides to people and check-in calls and everything. But to me, that doesn't seem to be exactly what you're describing, which is more like a social network. So I had put it at the chat at the beginning of the time. We have Senior Fit that's from Holy Cross, where we have 75 seniors in a room together. We have the Golden Age Club, which is an independent organization which provides a social once a month with the speaker or bingo or birthday. And then we have like Senior Nutrition, where people, I think that's funded by the county, where seniors can eat their meals together. So is the village like just one organization per town, or is it all of the services that that town provides? I think Christal probably knows all of those things through the GALE, the Greenbelt Aging
Assistance in living program.
assistance in living. But that's why I said we have a village in Greenbelt, but I don't know if it's the village. Whereas it sounds like some of your other villages provide like multi services all under one, maybe because you have a staff person. Whereas like a lot of what I mentioned, like the Golden Age Club, it's all volunteers, and Senior Fit is through Holy Cross Hospital, and the nutrition is through the county. So
Yep.
Can someone just redefine like how you're defining a village and what falls into it? Because
Okay,
it made me
I'm
think that
sorry,
when-
I had made
say
certain,
one more thing, because when you're talking about communication, honing the message would be all the way that seniors in Greenbelt can meet other seniors, but it wouldn't be through our Gives program.
right.
So thank you.
Okay. I'm going to parse this out. I apologize. I kind of plundered in, assuming people kind of were familiar with the concept, but I will just parse that out. There are plenty of resources and services, and you listed several, and Christal has been running many of these programs, as well as the Aging in Place in Prince George's. What ends up happening, I think what I'm talking about here, the village concept is, at its foundation, is neighbors helping neighbors age at home. So the major gist, which differs from the nutrition program or Senior Fit from Holy Cross or any other funded program that brings professionalized services to the community, is that the older adults themselves take charge of the process of their aging in their community. They form a group of leaders who then look around, they take stock and inventory of what's already out there. If there are, let's say, a robust social program in one particular community, then the village is not going to want to replicate or duplicate. They're simply going to say, okay, somebody else is taking care of that. What do we need to invest in and develop in our unique community that would help serve our choice to stay at home with a high quality of life? So in that respect, a village is a very nimble and flexible concept that adapts itself to the local community, whether it is a city or a county or a zip code or a civic association, and it is really dependent on the individuals who are starting it up. The biggest difference between formal services and this is that it is driven by the people, for the people, super democratic. And as such, what we're seeing, that there's a saying in the village movement, you've seen one village, you've seen my village. I'm sorry, my dog has a lot to say. In the respect that they're all doing very different things. And so in Greenbelt, you have this plethora of services, of resources, of programs, of ways of engaging. And the idea isn't to reinvent something. It's to figure out what to do and make it better. And in that respect, it's not as though every community must have a village. If you already have strong neighborhood connections, everybody knows one another, everybody's already helping one another organically, you don't really need a formal village. It's not as though it's a requirement or there's a template or a regulation or somebody that's going to say, this is what a village does, you must do this. If you have things going on organically, power to you. Celebrate yourself and be proud of what you have and enjoy it. And if you don't, then the village is there to then start the conversation. And indeed, there are many neighborhoods and communities that do not have those things. I hope that answered your question. I see Layla has her hand up.
Pazit, before we get too deep into the conversation, I'd like to get the other panelists to give their piece. Christal will be next. Layla, your question.
Is she going to finish her presentation and then I go into mine? I'm trying to get
No, I could stop.
We're vacillating back and forth.
No, I'm okay with stopping because I really want to, make sure we have all our ideas and messages here.
Okay. I don't want to cut you off if you're still on.
No, it's okay.
So, you're very provocative, Pazit, in some of your topics. I think it's so exciting, though. Exciting. Okay, everyone. I think I'm bringing sort of an overview. So with Lori's question about what a village is, I'm going to sort of give you the framework here in Prince George's County of a little bit of what we have, what some of our challenges are, and some of the things that we're going to, we feel that we have some gaps and needs here in Prince George's County. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see my presentation. Okay. Go back to the next one. Okay, so earlier in the conversation today, we talked a little bit about the Greenbelt Assistance and Living Program. The term village, when I came to the city of Greenbelt, the term village was not really one that was used a lot in conversation. It was still a new concept. And in 1999, the city of Greenbelt, through a grant from Naturally Occurring Retirement Community Supportive Centers in Chelsea, New York, was funded. It was a 3-year grant that came out of the Greenbelt, the aging, sort of the assisted living task force, which was convened for 3 years. It was made up of residents here in the city out of the need for supportive senior services. The city didn't have an assisted living. They didn't have a nursing home at that time because the nursing home had closed in 95. So out of this task force, which did everything from interviews to site visits to research, the recommendation came back to City Council to create a program to help people age in community, because they didn't want to leave Greenbelt. Their supports, their friends were here, but they wanted somehow not to build a brick and mortar structure, but to look beyond that and build a supportive program. So that is how, with the grant application, the Greenbelt Assistance and Living Program was built and developed. It started off as only information and assistance because the data was not there. It was about educating the community about the things that this program was going to bring. But it was also about shaping a unique model that would be specialized to Greenbelt and then have the flexibility to morph over time. And that's what it has done. I've been there now almost 20 years, and the program itself has truly morphed from an office of one person to now an office of 6, with on average about 30 to 35 interns from various schools around the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia that are incorporated into our program. But what we found over the span of time of running the Greenbelt Assistance and Living Program, that other municipalities and other interest groups were coming to the city to talk about how this program was done. Many of them actually are here today, and they're here in the form of villages. So when people were thinking about creating their villages, many of them came and spoke with both Gives, who we talked about a little bit earlier, who does consider themselves a village, as well as the Gale program. We spoke in College Park, we met with Hyattsville, we met with people from Chevrolet, and some other entities as well. The working group, out of that, the working group was formed in approximately 2014, 2015, out of the need to convene all of these people in the midst of growing programs. Of course, I was hoping they would be assistance and living programs like the Gale program, but that didn't happen. They became villages, which is just as wonderful. But we began convening quarterly. Like-minded people talking about how we could improve the quality of life of seniors while allowing them to age safely in their homes as long as it was possible. Aging in place, in my mind, is aging in the right place, the place that allows you to live your best life. And sometimes that may have been a house, and then it changed to an apartment, and maybe then it becomes an assisted living. But it's about your safety and your quality of life. So with this working group, we've convened, of course, villages, but we also have municipalities as part of this working group that have aging programs like Greenbelt. We encourage villages that are in startup mode, or those people just beginning in their infancy of talking about what a village is, to come to our meetings as well. And it's sort of interesting, since our inception, we have seen the birth of several of the villages here in Prince George's County over time. And then, of course, we have aging services providers. So it sort of becomes a think tank of people in various stages or various fields that come together to help villages and people thrive in the county. The purpose of this group is sort of here, what I have here on the screen. We have a big information and dissemination component, grants. There's so many grants out there. Many of our members are 501c3s, but on the other hand, others are municipalities. So there's many instances, a plethora of funding streams that are available for us to consider. We also look at, because in Prince George's County, there are many fewer villages than you'll find in Montgomery County, partnership opportunities and how we can make our program stronger through learning about different opportunities. Sometimes it's with our members around the room, and other times it's groups that are outside of the working group. We also share programming and publicize programming like today's session. And then we do startup coaching and consulting for new villages. I know that Layla and Lisa, we work with other communities to talk to their infrastructure about how a village could become a concept within their municipality as well. Now, we have taken our dog and pony show on the road. Most recently, we were asked again by the Maryland Municipal League to present at their annual conference in Ocean City. So this has been the second time that our Aging in Place program and the villages have presented. With the working group, we've also successfully partnered to apply for grants with the Maryland Department of Aging and local municipalities and foundations. And like I said, consulting with groups interested in starting a village. But I think one of the things that has become extremely valuable to the members is that, like I said, it gives you access to a think tank of a wide array of professionals, that when a village is running into a scenario or a situation, we sort of have this team to go to help solve some of the problems that they may encounter, and that their leadership may or may not have the expertise in, but they can go to the working group to help solve that. Okay, so Aging in Place in Prince George's County and villages sort of have a lot of different faces. Of course, it's the traditional villages that you have here represented, but in Prince George's County, that is a huge faith-based community that has a direct impact, because many of, as they call them, mega churches, the very large churches, have senior ministries that do many of the things or serve many of the purposes that villages do. They provide transportation, health and wellness, education, food supports, just a wide array of services. And of course, there are professional providers like the Senior Provider Network, Aging in Place providers, there's retirement communities, and more I'm starting to see the movement of senior apartment buildings with a strong service coordination program really be impactful in the way that many of our seniors are aging in community. So in some of these examples here, what we've found is that their need for a village is sometimes met in a different form. So a village, while we look at a traditional model, sometimes people find some of these similar services in some of the other avenues that I mentioned here. Unfortunately, I can't see all of my screens. So I can't see the bottom bullet because of the way the screen is set up. Okay, so as we went around the room earlier, we talked about the different villages here in Prince George's County and their start dates, 2011, 2016, 2018. And we're thinking Helping Hands in University Park was about, I'm going to say between 2016 and 17 as far as coming on the scene. But we've also talked over the years with other municipalities and other groups of individual citizens that were very interested in the start and the startup of a village. So over the years, these entities or residents in those communities there have expressed an interest in forming a village. Now, one of the things that I found is that the villages here and probably across the country have some very consistent pieces as well as distinctive, volunteer-based, from leadership as well as to the day-to-day interactions with residents and members, volunteers. In many instances, small operating budgets. I can say that's relatively true here in Prince George's County, but as you look in the DC metro area, some of the villages have a very nice balance sheet. Okay. Core services. The majority of villages have the components that fall into these categories: transportation, education, and some level of social engagement of some sort. And when I say social engagement, for some residents, the act of someone just coming to see them or calling them on the phone falls into the category of social engagement. It doesn't have to be a soiree or a dinner or something of that nature. Taking someone to the doctor and seeing another person, it's social engagement for some of the seniors that participate in these programs. But at the same time, while consistent, they are still distinctive. Many of the villages are tailored to meet the needs, obviously, of the people that are part of the village, as well as to the skill sets that the volunteers can bring to the table. Our fee structures range from free to, an annual membership, and those charging an annual membership typically have some methodology of subsidizing it for low-income seniors. Two of the villages, unfortunately, Layla dropped off, but Layla's and Hyattsville, to my knowledge, now have a part-time staff person that has come on board to help strengthen them in different areas. And then the difference is the organizational structure. For example, University Park has a municipal village program that's is considered a committee. But initially, when they were starting off, they were debating whether to be a 501c3, and the opportunity to become affiliated with the city of University Park became a more attractive option for them. The other villages are all 501c3s here, at least in Prince George's County. Now, challenges. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about challenges, because we talk about all the great work that we do, but I think there are some things that are challenges that we've seen over the years here when working with villages. We all know that the baby boomers are here, of which I'm officially a member, and the baby boomers are sort of what I would call the Starbucks generation, in that we want it our way, this way, that way. What I want in one village may not be what the next village offers, so they shop around and they really do look at their options. And I meet with people all the time that are looking for specifics, and they are well-educated consumers. So as they're looking at villages as an option, many of them are looking at other things to fill their dance card. One of the challenges that I've seen is sort of recognizing the value of the work being done by villages. The transportation, the many things that haven't cost the county or the state dollars that villages and volunteers have successfully for many years now been able to do. I think that capturing that and making that part of the message, I think, is imperative to establishing the value of what villages offer. Many of the villages, because of the size of their budget, struggle with a combined campaign. And one of the things that earlier in conversation Pazit had mentioned was that what we're seeing is that with Montgomery County's ability to have a person staffing the role of support for villages, it enables a consistent message, consistent information to go out about the village movement, where at this point it's more villages doing their own sort of messaging if their budget allows. Startup costs for most villages is sometimes one of the barriers, with core supports being, of course, liability insurance and the background check fees that are part of day-to-day operations for a village. Because most of the villages are started, as Pazit alluded to, from a grassroots movement of individuals who start these programs, sometimes in a basement, in a kitchen, around a table. The core liability of moving forward comes with a cost. And unless you have a financier who's willing to put down the few $1,000s it may cost to do liability insurance, et cetera, sometimes this can be a big hurdle for people wanting to start this type of movement. Community education campaigns to me are of paramount importance. Pazit alluded to messaging. And I think coming up with a message that is unique but still all-encompassing is a quest that we still search for. Everyone sort of has their elevator speech in their own communities. But I think that educating, just like Lori today, she had some questions about exactly what a village is. And I'm hoping that by the end of this webinar, many of the people around the room have a feel for it. One of the other things is because we are unique, and again, Pazit said, well, I say it all the time, if you've seen one village, you've seen one village. I think its uniqueness is also one of the selling points that we have. We're able to change and morph over time. And I'll use the example of Gives. When I first came to Greenbelt, Gives did things like writing letters and programming VCRs, and microwaves and things like that. So, as the world around us changes, I think it's imperative that villages are also flexible enough to know that sometimes things have to change. I think the pandemic sort of made us Zoom users out of many people that were never part of the Zoom movement or had no desire to be on a computer, et cetera. But it allowed many villages to continue to provide some of the social connections that sort of have enabled us to weave a fabric that are the lives of the village members. Increased funding opportunities for emerging and existing villages, I think, is paramount. And I'm going to sort of defer that maybe for the Maryland Department of Aging to address, hopefully in their presentation. But I think that we are unique, and in that most of the staff that run villages are volunteers. Funding opportunities for us is paramount for us to thrive and grow and continue providing the valuable services that we do. And exploring board development. As a founder of a nonprofit, I understand the concept of when you start something, sometimes people think that you are supposed to stay in that position for 150 years. And board development and transition and board terms and finding people that have that same vim and vigor, I think is of paramount importance for a village. But I think helping villages explore how boards can being helpful, that's the word I'm saying, being healthy and evolve over time with new leadership and new insight is paramount. But I know that many villages struggle with finding their successors as far as the board is concerned. So looking at what that catchment group can look like. Maybe it's outside of your community or outside of your neighborhood. That's my little presentation in a nutshell, and I put my information up there in case anyone is interested in Prince George's County of joining our working group. I have one of my many emails to different organizations. This is my Greenbelt email there. So I'm going to turn it back over to Robert, our host. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christal. Great information. And we will now turn it over to Ms. Woodward, I'm sorry.
Hi, thank you. Are you pulling up slides or should I be prepared to pull up slides?
I think we're going to pull them up for you.
Yeah, I'm just getting it pulled up right now.
Thank you.
Oops, that's
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you guys for having us on. We're really appreciative of the opportunity to be part of this conversation and have learned a lot already and look forward to, continuing to hear your thoughts. We are going to just share a little bit about first the Department of Aging, our sort of larger view of the department, and then how we see our interest in Village and how we see the role. And, we're very happy to be corrected in that as well and to take lots of suggestions and thoughts from the group. All right, so next slide. So I titled this Creating a Longevity Ready Maryland. That gives you a focus on how the Maryland Department of Aging is really thinking about our role. So just briefly about the Department of Aging for folks who might not be familiar, we are a cabinet level department. That means we have a secretary. Our secretary is Carmel Roque, who started this year under the Moore-Miller administration. We are designated as a state unit on aging by the Older Americans Act. Our primary partners are area agencies on aging. We have 19 here in Maryland, but we work with a variety of organizations, and we have grants that are currently supporting villages and many other types of organizations. We also manage the state's Aging and Disability Resource Center, which is known as Maryland Access Point, which means that our target groups are older adults, adults with disabilities, their families, and their caregivers. So, sometimes we think about aging, we think about a certain group. We really see ourselves working to be addressing the needs of families in Maryland. You can see our roles here, establishing priorities for meeting needs, evaluating our services, seeing if our programs are meeting those needs, advocating, and reviewing and formulating policy to make recommendations. This is a little bit different than how we have kind of seen our role in the past, so this might feel new for anyone who felt they were familiar with the Department of Aging previously. Next slide. So this is kind of our mandate from the Moore-Miller administration. To develop a multi-sector plan for aging, so really thinking about the role of a variety of organizations, sectors, departments, and working with them to address aging needs throughout the lifespan. Ensure Maryland is an age-friendly state. We're responsible for filling our vacancies, of which we had many and are growing smaller. We're a pretty small department, about 45 people, and we're growing, and we're very, very excited about that. Increase access to affordable housing and the ability to age in place, improve long-term care options, and address elder abuse, exploitation, and fraud. You guys might be thinking, well, we do all those things, right? Next slide, please. As you likely know, Maryland is aging, just like the rest of the country. So right now we've got about 1.7 million Marylanders who are over the age of 60. We use the age 60 as a cutoff because of Older Americans Act, but as far as we're concerned, aging is about where people are in their own lives. So, a person who is 80 may be more active, need less support than a person who is 50. It really depends on our circumstances. The population of 65 and older was the fastest growing population between 2010 and 2020 with a 32% increase. And, in Maryland and nationally, the real fastest growing population is people 85 and older. So we're really aging as a society. By 2030, we expect, it's projected, I guess, that 1 in 5 Marylanders will be 60 and over. You can go to the next slide, please. So all older adults, and really the Maryland Department of Aging believes that everyone, including older adults, should lead lives that are healthy, financially secure, socially connected, and purposeful. And this is really necessary to prepare for longer lives. So it says here, for the 100-year lifespan, it's projected that is our common lifespan in the near future. So, our population is growing now, and it is expected to continue to. So to successfully meet the needs and demands of our longer lived society, we really have to have initiatives. We have to have policies that empower older Marylanders and other members of our communities and families to contribute in meaningful and purposeful ways. That's what we're hearing from other societies that are decades ahead of us in this projected growth, is that, that meaningful activity is a huge component. Next slide, please. So this speaks to us, right? To age is to live, but living well in our later years of life is not a guarantee, and we need to plan to do that. Next slide, please. So what is possible? How do we see this? As we work on this pretty broad vision, we have to think in new ways. And these are just some guiding questions that we ask ourselves, and part of why we want to be here. And thanks for having us again. How can we create a population of older Marylanders that are healthy and vibrant and well into older age? What are we doing well? And what are the opportunities for improvement? And what do we need to consider over the next 10 years? To ensure that those, meaningful purposes that I discussed are possible. So I'm going to pass it over to Chelsea, who's going to talk about why we are so excited to be learning about villages.
Hi. So establishing villages in Maryland supports healthy aging in place by creating a tight-knit, community-based networks that provide seniors with a range of crucial resources and supports. These villages empower older adults to age in a setting of their choosing and independently within their homes and in their neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So as mentioned by Liz earlier, the Maryland Department of Aging is actively crafting a comprehensive multi-sector plan designed to promote healthy aging. Villages play a pivotal role in this planning process by aligning with and bolstering the initiatives championed by our governor and lieutenant governor. For the benefit of aging Marylanders, the village model emphasizes on community supports, social engagement, accessible resources, perfectly complements the broader vision and enhancing the well-being of older adults across our state. Through the collaborative efforts of villages, we can effectively realize these shared objectives and create more of a vibrant and inclusive aging and community in Maryland. Next slide, please. Here's why it matters. The driving force behind our work in the department is social connections. Villages foster a social connection and combat isolation, which is a significant contributor to declining health in seniors. Access to services. They provide easy access to services like transportation, home repair, and healthcare, allowing seniors to maintain their home and independence. Lifelong learning. Villages often offer opportunities for continued learning, keeping seniors mentally engaged and active. And then safety nets. They create safety nets for emergencies, ensuring that seniors have the immediate access when needed. Sense of purpose. Villages offer opportunities for volunteering and community involvement, which gives seniors a sense of purpose and fulfillment. So in essence, establishing villages in Maryland supports healthy aging in place by building strong communities that address the physical, emotional, and social needs for older adults, helping them lead fulfilling lives and comforts of their own homes. Next slide, please. So the social capital model. The Maryland Department of Aging views the village model as an integral component of the social capital model, reorganizing the significant contributions villages make to building and enhancing social capital within communities. Here's how MDOA sees the village model fitting into that social capital. So strengthening social networks, villages are designed to foster strong social networks among adults within the community by connecting seniors with their neighbors and creating opportunities for social interaction and support. Villages enhance the bonds that ties individuals together. Promoting civic engagement. Village often encourage older adults to engage actively in their communities, whether through volunteering, organizing events, or participating in local initiatives. This active involvement contributes to a social fabric of the community and generates a sense of belonging. Mutual assistance and supports. Villages emphasizes reciprocity and mutual assistance. With providing help to one another as needed, this embodies the social capital concept of social norms of I cannot talk today. I'm sorry. Where the trust and supports are exchanged. Information sharing. Villages serve as information hubs, sharing valuable resources, local knowledge, and services. This information sharing enhances social capital by making community resources more accessible to older adults. Trust and social cohesion. A village builds trust and social cohesion among their members and contribute to a creation of strong and interconnected communities. These elements are fundamental to the social capital model. Health and well-being. The social connection and support networks facilitated by villages have a positive impact in overall health and well-being of older adults. The social capital model recognizes the role of these connections in improving health outcomes. MDOA sees the village model as a particular embodiment of the social capital model's principles. Villages help strengthen the social fabric of communities, promoting civic engagement and create supportive networks and enhance the quality of life for older adults, aligning closely with the broader goals of building social capital within communities. Next slide, please. So the strategies. Strengthening communities, we recognize the importance of building a strong communities where villages can thrive in areas lacking a robust sense of community. MDOA is committed to facilitating strategies that encourage social bonds and connections. Established villages play a pivotal role in enhancing the lives of older adults. We're dedicated to providing ongoing supports and resources to help these villages in their valuable work. We would like to enhance communication. Effective communication among villages is key to sharing best practices and coordinate efforts. MDOA aims to establish channels that facilitate the exchange of ideas, experiences, and resources between villages. Increasing capacity. As the demand for villages' services grow, MDOA is committed to helping villages expand their capacity to meet the needs of their members. This may include providing training and resources to village leaders and volunteers. And then we would like to collect statewide data. To demonstrate the impact of villages, we seek to collect and analyze the statewide data. This data will showcase the positive outcomes achieved in terms of social engagement, health, and overall being for older adults, and then advocating for resources and supports. We recognize the importance of advocating for continued resources and support from government agencies and stakeholders. This advocacy ensures that villages have the necessary funding and assistance to thrive and grow. Next slide, please. So Maryland Villages has been a strong advocate for funding to support programs and services that enable individuals to age in place. Regardless of their age, income, or ability level, this advocacy has led to the establishment of an annual competitive grant opportunity as outlined in the Human Services Article 10-1201. This grant opportunity, which allocates at least $100,000 in funding, plays a crucial role in empowering individuals to live safely, independently, and comfortably in their own homes, while actively participating in their communities. Notably, 20% of this funding is specifically earmarked for villages, recognizing their valuable contributions to this mission. In fiscal year 24, this grant program resulted in 8 grantees, with 6 of them being villages. This demonstrates the tangible impact of Maryland Villages advocacy efforts in securing resources and support the essential work of villages, enhancing the quality of life for older adults and promoting aging in place. It underscores the commitment to the state to creating age-friendly communities that prioritize the well-being of all residents. Next slide. And that is all that we have. If you have any questions or concerns, or just want to, collaborate with us, we have our contact information on the screen. Please feel free to reach out. We are in the spirit of learning, as I mentioned that earlier today in my introduction. I am no expert in this, and this is where I'm seeking everyone on this call and then some, your guidance to help us motivate our work and to understand what the barriers and the needs are within the community. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
And I want to mention in the chat, somebody was asking about how many elders are on our staff to be at the planning table, and it's a fantastic point. We want this to be stakeholder-led. So we are working on one of the ways that we're trying to engage is also develop an advisory committee. So we've had a couple of communications. Hopefully some of you folks were on that. We'll be, we're working on a grant application that we weren't awarded a couple of months back, but we got a lot of contact information on that. And a lot of folks reached out and wanted to be part of the discussion and the planning. So we are trying to launch an advisory committee because we know that you guys are the ones who know best what is going on and can inform this process. So if you want to be part of that, please do contact Chelsea. Use our contact information. We put it up there because we want you to use it.
Fantastic. And I think it was mentioned before that this will be available, will be put up on for others to go back and look at. If you aren't able to get it now, we will have it available for you as time goes on. I really appreciate the presentations that were given today. Don't know how much time we have left, but it sounds like if we could marry Christal's opportunities with Ms. Wheeler's strategies, and next step would be create an action plan for that. But that's a little too simplistic. Lisa, are there any online chat questions that you want to bring up at this point? I didn't see any.
So there's been a running conversation in the chat about a number of questions, most of which I think have been answered. I guess we still do have about, if we are to go to 3:30, we still have about 10 minutes left. So we can keep going for a bit. Carter, I don't know if you can see any questions that need to be put forward. There was a question initial, and there was a debate back and forth about how villages are defined, whether they're all volunteer run, which they're not, because there are many villages that have employees, but they are community based. But villages do define their geographic area that they're serving. When they begin their startup, they define what services they're going to provide, what's needed, and most are probably like Hyattsville, which was to look around at what was currently being provided and to move forward from there. I see that Layla from Chevrolet Village didn't have a chance to say anything about the Chevrolet Village. So Layla, maybe you want to take a minute to go ahead and do that.
Okay. First, I want to apologize. I am taking this meeting from my car because we had 2 transformers blow, and that's why I wasn't at the beginning of this call. So please forgive me if I don't have a stable connection. I do want to talk about Chevrolet Village, but I also heard some things here that I think maybe our experience can provide some insight into. The Chevrolet Village, we really began from the idea of what does it take to not replace in any way the robust community connections that already exist in our community, but how to make it so that we were able to better connect and actually meet the needs identified by various organizations that weren't being met, to be able to have seniors, as we say, be able to stay in community and age in motion. And that's really been our driver. I think Christal said, I think others have said, not to have people trapped in their homes, but to have people to be vibrant and engaged community members. And that is to the extent that they are physically and mentally able to do so. But some of the questions that I heard and some of the things I read in chat really are about trying to figure out, what does it take? What does it take to be a village? And what I would say is, everyone who's on this call, most likely you are already in a place and in a thought process that is reflective of what a village can present. You're trying to figure out how to connect. You're trying to figure out how to solve a particular need. You see something that could just be a little bit stronger to bring your community together. Maybe you're not just looking at a senior model. Maybe you're looking at an intergenerational model and how an intergenerational model might strengthen your community. I was really impressed, when Pazit was bringing forward the idea of what I call about the I versus the we culture, and that idea of connecting with, in communities, we are stronger when we embrace our diversity, when we think in terms of how we connect, and when we think in terms of not just our individual experiences, but how we can help each other to have full life experiences all the way through how we age. So that's just something that I wanted to share. And we're 7 years in operation. We work based on a team structure. So we work both internally and then connected with community members to make things happen. And the seniors that are the members are at the core of all the work that's done.
Thank you. Thanks, Layla. Appreciate it. Are there other questions?
May I
Oh, there was
add?
there was a question about what is the minimum number of volunteers by Joanna Scherer. So I just want to respond to that quickly, that from experience, it's good to have at least 5 or 6 people who are all committed to this idea and willing to spend some time and sweat equity into it. That's a good beginning. If there's just 1 or 2 people, they will find that it's a lot of work for just 2 people, and 2, this is a community building exercise, and I don't think 2 people can possibly represent or demonstrate enough interest in the community in starting something like that. So that's just the startup. And if you have other questions, there's lots of resources on the Village to Village network where you can reach out to me directly.
May I add, and I want to piggyback off of Layla. Part of my work is visiting different jurisdictions, different towns, and speaking with leaders. Every community is vastly different. Every village is vastly different. What I'm noticing is that some villages really hone in that support on volunteerism, where others, they do not. They heavily rely on their community's leadership for funding, for resources. So in the terms of what does a village look like, there's never going to be one singular, model. There's a overarching model, but every village looks vastly different. And I think Pazit can actually speak more on that, as she is the expert and the guru with villages and a wealth of knowledge. Same with Liz and Christal. So, but that's what I've been noticing when I'm making my rounds across the state of Maryland.
Yeah, I would just want to piggyback on that, Chelsea. I mean, one of the things I think we have in Prince George's County that makes service delivery a particular problem, or the helping people build community, is that we have so many unincorporated areas here, so that there is not a community structure necessarily. I do know, I mean, I agree with Christal in the fact that we have many other kinds of programs here. For example, the large churches throughout Prince George's County, as well as some of the provider networks. But that does make collaboration across, outside of, let's say, the Route 1 and the Route 202, pathways, a little more difficult. We would love to get more of the other jurisdictions involved, as well as collaborate across some of these other organizations that do provide very extensive services to their seniors.
Layla, you got your hand up again?
Yes. In response to that question, I would also like to add that there are things that many of us have classically said are ways to strengthen the village movement. And most villages stand a better course of sustainability if they are able to develop articles of incorporation, if they are able to have strong bylaws, if they are able to put into how they function a sustainability plan, if they have funding for liability insurance as so that they can go ahead and provide that. If they have support in doing the background checks, monetary support in completing that, if they have monetary support or a way to network with different village software that can help organize volunteer requests. I mean, we began on Google Sheets is how we started, and then we moved over to village software through Helpful Village. All of these things, there are needs, and I think that can also strengthen villages across the board, and also have it so that villages are taken, quite frankly, more seriously. Too often, I believe that villages are poo-pooed and dismissed. Oh, that's nice. Pat you on the head. Aren't you doing something? When the village movement is actually and can be very powerful. And the people here on this call, you can be part of making that very powerful. And I know that that's part of what we've been talking about in Prince George's County, that it doesn't have to be municipal based, it can be faith based, it can be HOA based, it can be all of these things. It's the idea of being able to have agency in deciding how you age in your community as you define it.
If I may add some of the questions and ideas that have been in the chat and discussed. As far as geographics, what is offered, in many cases come down to those that are to the existing organization, come down to bandwidth and what they're able to accomplish. So again, from the standpoint of involvement, and I would also say that although many of these are volunteer organizations, you're basically starting a small business. So everything from board membership down to a driver's license, the ability to pick somebody up is a need for a village network. And the more you're able to accomplish those needs, the more offerings you're able to provide.
There was a question about whether the info and links in chat will be shared with the recording. Yes, we'll make sure we put all that together in one place, and we'll get it out to you on the early end of next week. I can't promise Monday, but the early part of next week.
I wish we could go on for a lot longer. We usually go to 3:30, and I think Zoom wants to cut us off at about that time. You have the links, I think, from us that you got on this call from, so you could follow up. But you have the links to the state and to Christal and to Pazit. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody, to thank Robert for suggesting this idea and for pulling it together, and to just say a couple of words about what's coming up. We do these as a monthly basis. Next month, we have a session on the history of movie theaters in Prince George's. And again, I'm just going to point out that Corridor Conversation started during the pandemic as a way of pulling people across all of our communities together to chat online when we're not able to come together. And we've continued doing it because people have been interested. We also have a session in February on the civil rights movement in Prince George's County, a session in March on with John Mayer, the Nobel Prize astronomer on the Hubble telescope, who'll be talking about the Hubble telescope, and hopefully with many of the pictures. We hope to be doing, assuming COVID is not running rampant through all our communities, we hope to run some in-person meetings, perhaps at the Clarice Center next spring. And that's that's our current schedule. There will be a session in November and a session probably in January. We just don't have them on the list yet, but they'll be on our website. I want to thank everybody for coming. And if anybody needs to be in touch with Hyattsville Aging in Place, you can get in touch by, I think Carter will put that address in the chat so people can get to HapCares or at HyattsvilleAgingInPlace.org or at hapcares@gmail.com. Any last questions before we go? I want to thank Pazit, Christal, Chelsea, and Liz for very helpful presentations and for each one of the villages that spoke. Thank you so much for taking your time on a pretty messy Saturday afternoon, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.